Coming up next, mock draft week rolls on. We're going to close out the lottery, hit the back end, all that and more next.
You are Locked On NBA Draft with no ceilings. Your daily podcast on the future stars of the NBA. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, draft sickos? What's really good? My name's Corey Tulaba of No Ceilings. Welcome to Locked On NBA Draft Podcast with No Ceilings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Before tip-off, check the FanDuel app and see what's dropping during NBA Happy Hour every Friday from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern. All right. It's an exciting time. Again, my name's Corey Tulaba here, NBA draft analyst at No Ceilings, and I'm going to be riding solo today on this mock draft episode as we go through picks 13 to 18. We're going to close out the lottery. We're going to get the back end of the first round started. Albert could not be here today because he is going to be live scouting as we record, but have no fear. We're still going to break down these prospects and picks in depth. So let's get rocking, baby. At pick 13, we have the San Antonio Spurs on the clock, and Albert selected Koa Pete from Arizona for the Spurs. In this exercise, Koa Pete drops a little bit here to the back end of the lottery. I think Koa Pete can very likely be a top 10 pick. I mean, we're talking about a guy with a pristine pre-college resume, up there with Cam Boozer for as far as like accolades and winning. And he's off to a pretty impressive year with Arizona, who are absolutely rolling. Arguably the best team in college basketball. Koa Pete's averaging 14.7 points, 5.8 rebounds, 2.8 assists, 0.8 steals, 0.7 blocks. He's shooting 56% from the field, 21% from three, 57 effective field goal percentage. I mean, just really, really effective. 8.5 BPM, 2.7 block percentage, 1.7 steal percentage, 17 assists, just 11.8 turnover percentage. He's hitting the offensive glass. The only thing he's not doing is shooting. But I really like his fit in San Antonio. I mean, when we're talking about the Spurs, Wemby makes everything easier, right? Like there is no really wrong answer for the kind of player that you could put next to him. You could put a big bruising center next to him and he can stretch the floor. You can put a smaller four in the mold of Koa Pete, who's going to be able to play a little bit inside as Wemby stretches out. I know Wemby's playing a little bit more closer to the basket this year, as he should be. The goal in a scenario like that, where you're pairing Koa Pete in the front court with Wemby, especially considering, the backcourt guys for the Spurs in Stephen Castle, De'Aaron Fox, Dylan Harper are not necessarily dead-eye shooters, is that Koa Pete is somebody who is going to become more comfortable along with those other guys at stretching the floor at a certain point. Because as much as Wemby, is this alien prospect player who, really has limitless potential that he can get to as far as his impact and what he could do on the court, he can't be the best and only floor spacer. You don't want him shooting as many threes as he did last year. And we've seen the concerted effort to get closer to the hoop, become more efficient, become more dominant there. Koa Pete is not a shooter. He's shooting 1.5 threes per 100 possessions, shooting 21.4% on those shots. He's only 64% from the free throw line. So this is a guy who definitely has some work to do in that regard. I do love his touch in the mid-range. I mean, he's got a really smooth kind of like turnaround fadeaway bag that I really dig. He's got good feel. I mean, he's had some monster games, some games where he's been a little bit quieter as well. But I think that's the nature of playing on like a veteran team that's #1 in the country. You're playing a role. Some days it's going to be your night. Some days it won't be. I think that he's got more self-creation ability that he's not necessarily getting to show fully. He was able to show some of it in AAU. And I kind of think that there is a little bit of untapped potential as a creator. Ultimately, though, I think you're looking at a guy who you want to see follow the developmental pathway, the same kind of pathway as a guy like Aaron Gordon, who, went to Orlando, was able to explore the studio space for a number of years, becomes like the #1-ish guy. And then ultimately, unfortunately for Orlando and to the benefit of Denver, where he helped win a title. You get a guy who's ready to step in, has been the number one guy, but has also understood how to be an ancillary guy and is now has these new tools in his toolbox to when it's time to step up, is comfortable in doing so. I think that's kind of the developmental trajectory you want for Pete. Not if you're San Antonio in this scenario and you're selecting him, you don't necessarily want him to be doing that in lieu of, a potential future trade. Obviously, you want him to do that on your team. The Spurs have one of the greatest shooting coaches of all time. Or had rather. I think he's on with the Thunder now, so it's my apologies there. But the Spurs, great developmental team, and I think ultimately a bet on Pete is a bet on the shot developing and with that underlying on-ball juice that he has. It is going to be rough. You've seen a guy who is kind of in his mold in Jeremy Sohan on that team, not necessarily find his place. Potentially looking like the odd man out, but you're hoping that Pete just has a little bit more. He's a little more athletic vertically. So strong. And you hope that the more, I guess the shot is more translatable is your ultimate hope, and that he becomes a more willing shooter than he's shown to be at Arizona. There are certainly questions there, no doubt about it. Let's talk about now, this was my pick for the Portland Trailblazers, Bennett Sturtz from Iowa. This is a guy who really made waves last draft cycle with Drake, took them to the tournament, was playing well against those teams, transfers up to Iowa instead of even testing the draft, going into the Big Ten. Questions, can he do what he did on a bigger stage against better competition? And for the most part, he has. If you're looking at what he's doing offensively, last year he was at 19.2 points. This year he's at 18.2 points. Last year he shot 49.8%. This year he's shooting 48.4%. He shot 39.5% from three last year. This year he's at 38.9. But he's upped the volume from 4.6 attempts last year to 6, which is massive, especially because so many of those are self-created. To be shooting this accurately on that percentage, really impressive. He's upped his free throw percentage from 79.4 last year to 82.8 on roughly the same amount of attempts. There are some, athletic indicators that, have shown up this year that didn't last year at a lower level. His steal percentage has dropped by a point, block percentage by a half a point. So there's clearly some things where you look at Bennett Sturtz's game, the rim pressure troubles. He's been elite as a shooter, but getting to the rack has not necessarily been his forte this year. I think part of that is just Iowa's team is, you can kind of sell out and just gap him and prevent him from getting to the lane. Some of it is just like he doesn't have like the super creative left to right wiggle. He's got a very steady handle. He's not going to turn the ball over a ton. That's one of the benefits. He helps you win the possession battle. And honestly, I think that would be great for Portland, a team who's at 500, they're in the playoff picture and has has built a team of winners. Scoot Henderson has been injured, who knows what his future kind of forecast for this team, but Caleb Love, has been a pleasant surprise. He's doing what Caleb Love does, which is get up a lot of shots and score kind of inefficiently, which unfortunately they need with their guard depth. We have Dame coming back next year. Drew is getting older, but, Bennett Sturtz is 6'4". I think he's a guy that could play next to any of these guys. Ideally, he offers more floor spacing, which is something that I think the team really needs. He can play off of Denny, who's, kind of established himself as the team's go-to guys, averaging 26 points, 7 rebounds, 7 assists this year. And I think he would play really well in two-man game with Klingon. Whether that is, pick and roll, DHOs, having a screener like that is something that Bennett Sturtz has never had access to. So, when you look at their forward depth, Tumani, Chris Murray, Jeremy Grant, these are not, Matisse Thybulle. These are not guys who were like elite level shooters. Let's continue to build with high IQ, high feel, highly efficient guys who can shoot, make plays, dribble, pass, shoot. Shaden Sharps and other guys having a strong year scoring the ball. Not everybody's cup of tea, but certainly talented. And so I like this pick. at this value for this team. I think this is a guy who, you're not necessarily swinging for the fences and getting a guy who's going to be a superstar here. You still hope that Scoot obviously can come in and be the kind of guy that you drafted at number 3 in the draft, but I think that they could play off each other too, even if that scenario works. So I don't know. I'm a fan of Bennett Sturts, maybe more than other evaluators in amongst the mainstream, maybe more than even some NBA teams, but I do think he's a lottery level talent. And I think that he would really fit in with the way that Portland plays. So I was happy he was available here for the Trailblazers pick, closing out the lottery in this no ceilings mock draft team exercise. So we are going to take a quick break. And then on the back end, we are going to hit picks 15 and 16 next. Fridays already feel different during basketball season, and FanDuel is making them even better. Every Friday night before the games tip off, FanDuel gives fans a new way to kick off the weekend with NBA Happy Hour. NBA Happy Hour is your official pregame, a limited time window where special offers drop right inside the FanDuel app before the action starts. Fridays from 6 to 7:30 Eastern have become appointment viewing with NBA Happy Hour. Opening the FanDuel app during Happy Hour always brings something new: boosts, bonuses, and surprises. It's easy to check the weekly special before tip-off and make a move before the windows close. The timing's perfect, right before the games, right before the weekend starts. It adds extra energy to Friday night basketball without overthinking it. So, before tip-off, check the FanDuel app and see what's dropping during NBA Happy Hour. Every Friday from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern, a little basketball, a little action, a whole lot of Friday energy. That's NBA Happy Hour. Only on FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Thank you for making Locked On NBA Draft with No Ceilings your first listen of the day. And thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. If you haven't already, go check out our new Everydayer Club. You'll get access to an ad-free audio feed for Locked On NBA Draft with No Ceilings, compatible with Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and every other major podcast app. You'll also get an invite to the members-only Locked On Everydayer Club Discord server, which includes a group chat just for listeners of this show. Go to LockedOnNBADraft.supercast.com or check the link in the show notes to learn more. All right, y'all. We're back. We hit the lottery. We finished it off in this No Ceilings team mock exercise. And with the 15th pick, the Miami Heat are on the clock. And Albert was making this selection. He selected Thomas Haug out of Florida. Champion with the Gators last year. And he's a guy who I think has been, I don't want to say the lone bright spot for Florida, but Florida has not exactly lived up to expectations. But Florida has. I mean, he has made major leaps this year in an expanded role. Went from 10 points a game to 17.4. He's rebounding more. Assists are the same. Steals and blocks are almost identical as well. He's getting to the free throw line more. He's shooting 76% from there. 35% on 5.3 3-point attempts per game. So that's 0.7% better than last year on higher volume, which is great. So the shot looks like he's obviously not like a shooter, all cab shooter, but he's going to be a guy that's capable enough that you have to close out on, and he can attack the rim. He's tough. He's physical. He gets to the free throw line. And he's got good feel. So I love what he does. He's got great positional size at 6'9". He's tough. He's strong. His motor is crazy. I had a chance to watch him earlier this year. There were some things that, you noticed about him is just he wills himself into productivity. And that's a very Miami Heat aspect to your game, like just having that dog in you, right? Like that's what the Heat are known for, Heat culture. He would fit right into that. He offers them more positional size, right? Like in that front court, they have the bigs, they have forwards. I mean, they're a deep team in a lot of ways. So this is like just continuing to stack talent and productive players. And Haug is a winner. He stays in Florida. I mean, it's hard not to appreciate the fit between Haug and the Miami Heat, quite honestly. I think this was a really great selection here from Albert. for Miami. At 16, I made the selection. Warriors on the clock. I selected Yaxel Lendeborg out of Michigan. And I was ecstatic to be able to select Yaxel here because I was assuming going into this exercise that he was going to go a lot higher. I mean, Yax has been arguably the best player in college basketball. You could say Cam Boozer, and I would hear that argument out and potentially agree. But this is a guy who's got a 17.4 BPM, which is insane. I mean, his advanced stats are kind of jaw dropping, in a lot of ways, how he's affecting the game in every aspect of the floor, offensively and defensively. Now, why is Yax, if he's the best player in college basketball, he measured at the combine last year at, I think, 6'9", without shoes, I believe, 7'4" wingspan. He's like 250 plus pounds. Like he's just he's got an NBA frame, like the consummate 4 NBA frame. He's being productive in a way that is, we were all hoping that this is what we were going to get when he decided to forego the draft last year. The reason that he's available here, just outside the lottery, is he's really old. He's going to be almost 24 years old. At the draft, like this is his third college season at the D1 level, but he played multiple years of JUCO. So he should be dominating, right? Like that's what you want from a guy who had a lot of hype coming in. You want to see him dominate. But because of his age, it's not the same as Cam Boozer dominating, who's 18 years old as a freshman, right? Like this is a guy who's lived a lot more life, 25% more life than somebody like Cam Boozer. So it's great to see. I mean, that he's able to, another, tip of the cap to him. He's playing next to Daymara and Merez Johnson, who are two bigs who are not really stretching the floor in a meaningful way. And he's been able to fit in. I mean, they're playing bully ball. They all have high feel. They all play hard with motor. But Yax is showing his positional versatility too, being able to, play 3 and play next to 2 bruisers. So not only can you play him, in the 4 potentially as a small ball 5, but you can scale him down a little bit too, which is really interesting. Now, obviously there's a lot of college season left to be played. We'll see where he ends up with his numbers at the end of the season. Michigan is not looked as dominant lately. They took an L to Wisconsin. It was a close game. I mean, it was a close game at Penn State in which they won. So they're not dominating with these 30, 40-point wins on a nightly basis like they were earlier in the year. But they're still, one of the best teams in college basketball, has a chance to go deep in March, in which case Yax can continue to build his case for not only as a top 20 guy, but potentially, a guy who we do consider much earlier in the lottery. Now, history does tell us that regardless of production, NBA teams do tend to shy away from taking older players like that because there isn't a track record of, success for really old players coming in when you draft them high. So this might be his range, to be perfectly honest, even though he has been awesome. We'll see. But with the Warriors, this is a team with the Jimmy Butler injury. We'll see what they do at the trade deadline. They have Steph Curry. So this is a team that has to continue trying to win now. You have to, until Steph is gone, you have to try to put a team around him that is ready to contribute. And that's another reason why this makes sense, is that he works well with Steph, because he could, hopefully with his frame, with his skills, with his age, his maturity, you want to say he can come in and provide meaningful minutes. And you hope that he can do that, right? Like, and I think he fits into their system, the way that they play, with the toughness. I think that obviously they need a healthy Jimmy. They need Steph to continue to be Steph. But, this is a way in which they can get, hopefully, a productive player who can actually fill minutes for them on the cheaper side, given, what their situation is with Draymond, Jimmy, and Steph from a cap perspective. So I think that, if Jimmy can come back next year, or, there's rumors that they might even look to move him and, try to bring pieces in, even with the injury. all that's up in the air, but they still need to add win now pieces, and that's exactly what Yaks is. So when we come back from the break, we're going to hit pick 17 and 18, close out the show. That's coming up next. New year, new systems. This is the time when a lot of us look at the messier parts of how we run our business and think there has to be a better way. And there is. Streamlining your communications is one of the quickest upgrades you can make. That's why today's episode is brought to you by Quo, spelled Quo, the smarter way to run your business communications. Because when your team is reachable, organized, and communicating in one place, you're not just working cleaner, you're creating more opportunities to connect with customers. I love how simple Quo makes everything. Your whole team can call and text from one shared business number, so nothing gets missed. Everyone sees the full conversation thread, which makes replies faster and more personal. It works right from your phone or computer, and you can even keep your existing number. And Quo's smart AI tools automatically log calls, summarize conversations, and highlight next steps. So details never slip through the cracks. It's no surprise Quo's the #1 rated business phone system on G2, trusted by more than 90,000 businesses, from solo operators to growing teams. Make this the year where no opportunity and no customer slips away. Try Quo for free. Plus, get 20% off your first 6 months when you go to quo.com/LockedOnNBA. That's QUO.com/LockedOnNBA. Quo, no missed calls, no missed customers. Thanks for tuning in today to Locked On NBA Draft with no ceilings. All right. Pick 17, the Oklahoma City Thunder are back on the clock. Albert was on the clock for this pick, and he selected Nate Ament out of Tennessee. Nate Ament, potential top 5 pick coming into the year. I was personally a little lower on that, but still thought that he very well, coming into the year, was worthy of being a top 10 prospect, even if I thought that, it was a little crazy to keep him in that top 5 group. Got to see him at McDonald's, All-American, Hoop Summit. And it kind of foretold the story of Nate Ament's college season, where he's really struggled in a lot of ways. He's been actually pretty good in other ways, which is why, despite his season, he is not just like completely somebody who is just like, we're going to fade him and put him to next year. Because you can make a case that you could work with a lot of the tools that he has. You look at his raw numbers, you're like 15 points, 6 rebounds, 2.5 assists, 2 stocks, not bad. And then you get to the shooting percentages, 41% from the floor, 27.8% from 3, 76.4% from the free throw line. He's just been inefficient because he's a guy who, despite putting on weight this year, noticeable from, the same time when we saw him during the high school all-star circuit, he still doesn't know how to play through that physicality. He's not shying away from it, and that's one of the reasons that you can be positive with him. He's got a 62% free throw rate, not percentage, free throw rate. So he's getting to the line at a really, really strong clip because he's willing to go and absorb and embrace that contact. He just doesn't know how to finish through it and play through that physicality, because it's not something he's ever really had to do. He's also somebody who has never been super bursty. He's tried to win with his handle and skill, his height. So, he never was able to really create true separation, even in high school. Even when he was having dominant scoring displays, he wasn't separating from teams. He was, getting to maybe the elbow with a guy on his hip and then just backing him down, turning over and shooting fade away middies, which is not the most efficient shot in the world. And so, I just think that, from a scoring perspective, this was kind of predictable, especially going to the SEC, playing in a really physical conference. There was going to be a learning curve. So I think that he's a guy we can't give up on yet. He's hitting the offensive glass. He's got good feel as a passer. His stocks are decent. He's just got to start hitting shots. He was known as a shooter with his finesse game. I didn't think he was an all caps shooter necessarily personally, but he's better than 27.8% in my opinion. Now he's shooting 8 threes per 100, which is, decent, especially from a guy who's 6'10". but the shot's got to go in more. I mean, the free throw percentage at 76%, you can work with that, but it's not necessarily indicative of like a great shooter either. So maybe the shooting is a little overrated, but I don't think that we need to completely move on from Nate. I think this is a guy who we got to give the entirety of the year to, because he does have a ton of skills in a 6'10" frame. And that's rare. And teams are going to value that, and they're going to bet on that. And the Thunder in this scenario, they're playing with house money. This is, the best team in the league, the defending champions. They have multiple picks, and they're getting the guy who's projected to go number 4 down at 17. I mean, we've seen them take bets on blue chip talent even earlier than this. So like, I think that, you look at Ousmane Dieng, like if you can, let's get a do-over and see if, we can get somebody who's kind of similar. I think that this is a good thing, man. For the Thunder, like, again, you're playing with house money. I think this is an easy pick for OKC here, just taking a shot on a blue chip prospect. At 18, I was on the clock now. The Atlanta Hawks select Ade Mara out of Michigan. I took Yaks a couple picks ago out of Michigan. I'm taking Mara here. Ade Mara is another one of these guys who, he's transferred to Michigan. He from UCLA, originally from Spain. When he came over to the States, he was projected as a top 5 pick. Things did not go his way at UCLA. If you've been following college basketball in any capacity recently, it's probably not a shock to you that Cronin's not getting the most out of his prospects. But if you looked under the surface, the advanced numbers were strong with Mara, especially last year, and especially towards the end of his season. So you look at a guy who's listed at 7'3", 240 on Sports Reference. He's got it's a monstrous frame, and we've seen these big centers be really successful recently, even if they can't stretch the floor. It's not a requisite. Somebody like Luke Cornett, who was looked at as a journeyman, has become one of the more valuable centers in the league because he can protect the paint, he could score efficiently at the rim, and he knows how to play the right way. Mara is pretty similar to that kind of description. He's not going to stretch the floor, but he's really going to protect the paint. I mean, this year he's got a 12.2 block percentage. He's got a career over his 3 seasons, 13.6 block percentage, which is monstrous. He's got a 16.2 career assist percentage, career high 18% this year. He rebounds the heck out of the ball on both sides, offense, defense. He's productive. He could score around the rim. He's an awesome passer. If you've seen some of those like football, baseball passes down court, like on a rope to the receiver, I mean, he hits cutters in the post. He's so big. He's got good footwork, good hands when you throw it high. He's just been a very effective player this year in this context. Is it the Dusty May effect? Is this real? I think it's real. And I think in the NBA, on the right team, he's going to be really effective. So about his fit with Atlanta, this is a team kind of in turmoil, in a transition period, right? Like, just traded Trae Young for a bag of chips. They've turned the keys over to Jalen Johnson. We're going to see how that works. They don't really have a lot of size, though, outside of Porzingis, who's like always dealing with something. He's always hurt. Okongwu is, one of these undersized kind of centers who doesn't have power forward skills. So he's kind of a tweener in a bad way in that front court. Mo Gay is certainly interesting, but he's one of these guys who's like very slight of frame, doesn't really have the girth to bang with the Edis, the Jokic's, the Embiids, these big bruising centers that are really in vogue again. And I think Mara's just, an easy fit in here. He could play off of all of these guys. I mean, I definitely thought of maybe getting some more shooting here. I mean, Kispert is going to help. But I think this is great value. I could see Mara going in the lottery. I think he's going to be a good NBA player. And I think for Atlanta, getting a center that you can kind of lean on and not have to worry about losing size without Porzingis, and maybe you can learn some stuff from Porzingis. Who knows? I think that that'll really shore up their front court in a big way. So Guys, thank you for tuning in today to Locked On NBA Draft with No Ceilings. We will be back tomorrow with the Tyler, so make sure you subscribe and follow Locked On NBA Draft with No Ceilings so you get all of the latest episodes. Follow No Ceilings on all socials at No Ceilings NBA. And if you never miss an episode, the Everydayer Club, guys, it's built for you. Get the Locked On NBA Draft with No Ceilings ad-free, plus members only Discord access and more. Head to lockedonnbadraft.supercast.com to join the club. For those of you on video, we send you to the first ever 24/7 national NBA YouTube channel. On audio, make sure you make your second listen NBA Game Night on Locked On NBA. I'm Corey Tulaba. Thank you for rocking. We'll be back later in the week to close out the mock. Thanks for rocking. Peace.